What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we are giving you a state of the market and stock picks for April 21st, 2022. So if that sounds like something you're interested in getting daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and week ahead, consider subscribing because that's exactly what I do here. Now let's get straight into state of the markets. We had the beige book come out. But the biggest thing with the beige book is there's not really anything new in the beige book. We're well aware that there's going to be double rate hikes. We're well aware that bond buying will continue as long as the war is essentially on, as long as that threat is there, that fear is there. We will continue to buy assets going forward. Now, interesting theory that I overheard essentially is that all this money we've been playing out or giving out towards Ukraine could be helping alleviate some of the inflation concerns, because some of the data that's coming out is showing that we may have reached peak inflation. Now, not saying that can't cycle around, but nonetheless, it seems like we might have, considering some of the numbers are starting to come down. But going forward, we are in full earnings mode for the most part. But another big concerning thing that we're starting to see, and one key thing to watch tomorrow, is that Tesla absolutely obliterated earnings. With everything going on, they absolutely crushed expectations. And they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with chip shortages, because if you haven't noticed, a lot of the earnings with chips, they've been crushing earnings, but there is a huge concern in forward outlook. So every time they provide forward guidance, they have been tanking, and this is a concern. This is something Elon Musk kind of briefly touched on today, that they have plans to change to get lithium for batteries, which is going to be big. And something I've also seen that EV batteries could even be become more of an issue with supply than chips. And if that's the case, EVs could really take a hit, especially considering the fact that there's a big push for EVs for renewable energy. But also understand that there is still massive amount of inflation. You have China that essentially has zero policy for any viruses. So they go on lockdown as soon as something shows up. And so you're having a lot of issues going on with that. But somehow Tesla managed to come out on top. And this is key to watch tomorrow, is that technical wise, as you can see on the SPX, we look like we're retesting that trendline break, which could be really bullish tomorrow. It could very well be bullish, but that really depends on Tesla. How are people going to interpret Tesla and what they see in the future? Just because they did well now, people may just start selling because of what they foresee in the future. And that's what's great about these earnings, is they tell you, they kind of forecast what they are expecting from these CEOs. So, and providing forward guidance in, what they fear coming up. And so that's the biggest concern, is batteries and chips. And that is essentially running growth. And last year, I think it was about last year, there was a lot of the different companies came into SPX. So a lot of people were dropped last year and rolled in a lot of growth stocks into the index. Now, being said, and having chip shortages and having EV shortages, or battery shortages, which are going to affect EVs, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen moving forward. Now, we may not see it on this earnings, but one thing I've also noticed too is a lot of these people aren't going to provide massive forward guidance, because of the fact that you have a lot of uncertainties. So they aren't going to provide something that they don't think they're going to be able to meet expectations. Obviously, that's what they try to do. But it's kind of setting things up for, okay, well, come next quarter, when we do earnings again in the next cycle around, if they do actually hit, they can make some massive moves to the upside. And I think that's what we're kind of setting up for. So when we start getting to Q2 earnings, you're going to start seeing that. And I think that's something big we will start seeing, is that these people are going to figure it out. So a lot of these big companies, they will figure it out. Tesla will figure it out. That's what they do. They do it very well. And so being said, I think they're going to blow expectations out of the water again, even bigger, given the circumstances, because that's what Elon does. He solves problems. So it'll be interesting to see, again, moving forward, see how these chips play out. I think the chips are continuing to get battered. Netflix, horrible earnings. Biggest concern there was forward guidance about them losing 2 million subscribers is a huge issue, and they tanked today, which was one of my best plays today, and possibly even to tomorrow. But we have to see what is going on there. Facebook also plummeted ridiculous because of the fact that they've lost tons of people because of Russia, and you just can't get those people back. So being said, tomorrow will be interesting. Banks held the index up, and so that is the ultimate question. Will the banks hold? If the banks do not hold tomorrow, the market, I think, can really pull back and tank. Even though technical wise, it looks like we can go for another breakout here. If the banks do not hold, we could sell off pretty heavy. So again, Tesla will be your lead indicator on how that does. Crushed earnings, if they start selling tomorrow, that's your indicator to see that we're going to be pulling back more. Again, we're well aware of the double rate hikes and everything else, so that is nothing new. At this point, again, it's more so about supply chain issues and how this is going to affect these companies in the future. And we're going to start seeing that more. Again, next week, you'll have some bigger tech earnings as well, and that will kind of really show you what we got in store. But with even everything being said, I think the biggest thing to remind yourself here is that the market believes we reach peak inflation. The market but just might run up from that. So I think at this point, again, there's so much negative news that anything that looks like hope, the market will run on. And that very well can be what it is. Again, technical wise, SPX looks like we could start getting some gas to the upside. We definitely want to keep hold of that 44.64. As long as we can stay above that, I think we can start rocketing back up. For the most part, you're going to get a 45.66 ceiling there, pretty hard ceiling. If we can break that, I think this could be possibly a higher low. Technical wise, again, technicals haven't been playing out the greatest, so you can't go 100% off that. You still kind of need to know the market sentiment, so really watch that level. Again, if we do break down, I think we're going to need a bigger catalyst to break down, but we very well could break down. We do have Powell tomorrow. It does say it is pre-recorded, so pre-recorded isn't going to get us any new information there. More so, if he was fielding questions, we would probably get something, which one part of it says it's pre-recorded, the other part does not. I don't know if the other part is he's actually talking tomorrow. Again, if he's not actually fielding questions, it's not really going to matter anyway. I think at this point, whatever he says is kind of null and void. It's more on the action that is going on in the next meeting. When we get closer to that meeting, I think we might get a little bit more volatility again, which is expected after earnings. You're going to start getting some sell-off anyway. And then you got Bitcoin hit the trend line pretty good, and we are starting to head back up. So again, I think we could break or hit that 50K mark on this push up. We'll definitely have to see on that. These daily resistances, Bitcoin's kind of just been blowing through that. Again, this is why it's important to have a top-down view. Again, on the daily, that was a complete wick straight back into the channel. So it looks like we're headed back up for the most part. Again, we want to break that 43K mark. Essentially, if we can get past that again, break back through the 45K mark, and then I think we could head back up to the 50K mark and hopefully continue on. Again, I think the market Bitcoin and the market are kind of running in parallel. So there's just been a lot of heavy news, a lot of policy, a lot of different changes. And then we'll kind of, I think, even out, filter out, and then we'll start running towards the end of the year. I think it's a strong possibility. So going into tomorrow, again, the biggest one, continuations are big around this market. These are some of the easiest plays going into tomorrow. And Tesla did very well on earnings, but as you can see, and this is kind of also what's making me think that the markets might start selling tomorrow. Now, they did absolutely great and they crushed it. We hit the 1045 and that was straight sellers. And now are we going to hit that again tomorrow and straight sell again? If we do start selling, I think there's a bigger catalyst. People are probably more so going to sell, going to the FOMC meeting could be a possibility. People will try to price in a double rate hike. I think at this point we've priced in a lot more than people expected. I don't think there's really a true catalyst to sell, but I still think we're kind of in that place where things aren't really great and things aren't really fantastic, or things aren't horribly wrong as far as things are pretty bad. But I mean, just in the general market sentiment, like there's no new bad news. And then there's still really that there's a lot of bad stuff going on. There's inflation, whatnot. But the good news is that the companies are still doing well. It's just their forward guidance isn't the greatest. They are uncertain of what's going to happen, especially if the war continues. Yes, Biden. There's one thing to remember too is Biden is trying to provide a lot of relief and a lot of sanctions to essentially stop Russia from doing this war. Now, how long Russia could probably go a very long time, and it's probably going to impact the U.S. more than it actually is currently right now. He's tapping into a lot of resources right now. When it's essentially who's going to run out of resources at that point. I think that's kind of what the market is kind of looking at now, especially on these earnings. Like, okay, well, how much more are we going to get affected this year? And so I think the market is kind of still uncertain. That's why you're not getting these huge blowout earnings like you're typically seeing. So we may actually hit this and just start selling. We may just play this chop very well much going into the Fed meeting. If that's the case, my guess is if we do start selling, the market is undecided, and we'll just wait for the FOMC, try to get some more time to try to figure out what's going on in the world before starting to go for all-time highs. Again, we need a bigger catalyst. The forward guidance just is not looking good enough to, I think, push us up. Again, I can be completely wrong, and Tesla could blow right through and continue up. Very well could happen, just because it's Tesla and it's still crushed earnings. But again, there was a lot of concern and forward guidance on what was going to happen with batteries. So again, something to watch. Nflx is one I want to watch tomorrow. Now it's already sold off really heavy already. I don't know if there's going to be any bounce. There absolutely was no bounce today. I expected some kind of relief bounce, but considering that they were talking about losing 2 million subscribers, I'm not really sure if this thing has a chance here. So we're gonna see what happens here tomorrow. Watching that 253 again, you have the 20 EMA essentially sitting around that 300. The 300 mark. I don't think we're gonna get that big of a bounce, but essentially at this point, I think any bounce you could probably short once. So I'm really watching that daily support, which is roughly around that 38%. If we can get some kind of crazy bounce on that, could be good for a short. But definitely want to keep on watch for the next couple of days. Again, that first retest of the 20 EMA daily, you're going to get a hard rejection off that. That's what I'm looking for. But we may just continue to sell. So looking for a second day continuation. Again, you're getting close to that 200 psychological level. So you're going to get a big bounce there more than likely. So you're getting closer to that point to where it's really 22 points. If this thing gaps down, is really trying to capture a 5-point move down to 200 really worth it? More than likely, it's probably not. So, but I do want to keep it on watch. Google has earnings next week. It did break this mini trend here. For some reason, I think, like I said, I think the market just may come back down to this level. I think the market maybe want to see more earnings, may want to see how Apple's doing, may want to see how Amazon is doing before continuing forward. Again, all forward guidance has kind of been, everything is very uncertain just as of right now because of the war. sanctions, lockdowns. How much is this really going to affect everything? I think the market wants to know, digest a little bit more about the different earnings to kind of see what's going on. So we might just get chop because of that. And then if any new news comes out, again, could bring volatility to the market. So I want to keep an eye on Google. Again, that 2,500 mark is a critical level. I don't want to break this. I don't think it will. I think we'll float around this range again, but that's what I'm looking at tomorrow. A shop, it's blown out today. It's at a good support for the 520 here. If it does hit this, as long as it can hold essentially the 514 tomorrow, you can see a nice bounce back out of this, possibly back to the 550. Again, you have to see here this thing chopped around for about half a day into the next day and then popped again. But you don't want it below this. If this thing does sell off here, again, it's got stock split. To be honest, I think the flare of that, the shininess of that kind of wore off. I really don't think this thing, I think there was a strong possibility. I think you have a small window before it pops back to previous numbers. Now, I think at this point, it's just going to settle around here. I don't really see shop really doing too much. It does have earnings coming up. So if it does do really good in earnings, could bring this thing back up. But I think more than likely, the market sentiment's just still very uncertain. Again, sanctions and lockdowns, people want to see what's going on before they buy back in to anything like that, especially with Amazon Shop, sanctions and everything else, and how that's actually affecting those companies. And, you can get data, and that's great, but you want to see the numbers from the actual companies to see if that's true or not. So that's ultimately what I think the market is waiting on at this point. Now, LRCX, they had earnings. They look like they're starting to bounce, so this might be one to watch. Watch the 470 level, and I think you can get back possibly up to the 500. So kind of watching this tomorrow. But ultimately, again, the forward guidance on these things, they aren't the greatest, and we've seen this on TSM. I didn't really watch. ASML had earnings in the morning as well. Let's see it on here, ASML. ASML had earnings this morning, and they did pop, but they didn't do anything. Again, forward guidance is so uncertain on these things and how much it's going to impact these guys. No new buyers want to move in on that, especially even if they did really well. And this is why a lot of these good big name stocks, essentially, they do really well, and that's fine, and that's great. That's why you get the pre-run up. But then afterwards, like, well, we're not really certain. So people are like, well, I'm not going to buy in. Then I'll just wait till I see, wait till I know, and then I'll buy in. And so I think that's what you're seeing a lot, especially in chip space, in all those hurdles that they have to get through. Then soon affecting EVs. The good thing about Tesla's more. But Tesla heavily relies on battery packs, so they have a more of an initiative to go out and try to, create their. Or I think there was news today about them going in with some other company. I don't know if it was Ohio or something, but building a factory to essentially build batteries. So that was something that briefly came up just before earnings today. So that'd be interesting. A lot of these value stocks are something else. The targets, your cost, a lot of these things are running so hard. You really have to be careful with this, especially cost is coming right into heavy support here, or heavy resistance here. And I think very much, you got rejected once. The second one, if it does fail here, I think it could get hit pretty hard. So that could be a play tomorrow. Though if it does break that, you get price discovery again and you start running. But I think we're going to start rotating back. People have been talking a lot about value, a lot about banks. Banks have been really running hard. It looks like there's another bull flag here. But you do have some strong resistance here at the 135. So that could be the case too. Maybe we get a nice run tomorrow. hit that resistance and then start selling off again. Again, I think the market really wants to see what some of these bigger techs have up their sleeve. Tesla did good, but again, you're one of your best companies, maybe the best company. It's debatable, but one of the best companies is saying that they're having issues, even though they're putting out ridiculous numbers. They should be right back up to 110 or 1200, right? But they're not. Right, you're used to seeing these, but the forward guidance is very iffy on these things. It goes, okay, just because you blew it out to this quarter, you're going to be able to repeat. And if you can't repeat that, and if you're saying there are concerns, then we might get a small pop. We may reattempt the 110 or the 1100 mark tomorrow, maybe. But again, people aren't going to hold. And something I say, once these companies have earnings, though, if they do well, they typically run for a couple days. They typically run 3 or 4 days. They die out, and you just don't touch them because they just sell off for a couple weeks. Normally, the market as a whole kind of sells off after big techs, typically. And then you get your individual poppers while they have earnings or whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But again, that's pretty much what I got for tomorrow. I don't have too many picks tomorrow. I think there's a lot of trying to feel out the market. I've been playing a lot of the index because I don't want to play the individual value stocks because of the fact that the banks play heavily into that, and the banks have been running. And I think value will turn at any point. And then if value turns, at least if you're playing the index, you'll have tech has been kind of picking up, which kind of helps the index. So this is why I've been heavily playing the index mostly, and playing individual stocks, primarily the ones I do trust more, have more faith in, that have that cult-like following that can help push the stock up if it does sell off. So that's essentially what I got for you guys today. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a like button. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.